Now, last October, Londoners were asked to help track down a man in one of the Austrian artist Hans Schwarz's paintings entitled Jerome. Very little else was known about the work, on display at the M1 Fine Art Gallery in Greenwich. That is, until now, thanks to the social media campaign. Jerome has been found and joins us now, Jerome Senn, along with Peter McAllister from the gallery. Thank you very much for coming in. Jerome, we'll find out about your story and how you knew Hans in a moment. But Peter, just give us a bit of background to this social media campaign. Why did you want to try and find the man in this painting?
Well, we launched Hans Schwarz's exhibition in the gallery to run all through October, and because unfortunately Hans Schwarz has passed away and so has his wife, we're still in the process of gathering information about him. It's always the case with a deceased artist, and this one particular picture, which is beautiful, we knew so little about, other than, well, we knew basically nothing about it other than it was an oil painting and it had Jerome written on the back of it. So we asked the public for help, and the public answered, and a number of months later Jerome got in touch with us to say, I'm the man in the painting.
He certainly did. We can see the painting now, and we can see the real thing in the real flesh there, Jerome. How did you find out that people were looking for you? And when you did find out, how did you feel?
Well, it was Christmas Day. I started thinking about Hans. I was doing some painting, had a bit of a painter's block, and thought, Hans would be the one. But I knew he'd passed away, and did a Google search, image search, and for Hans, and saw the London Live
request for a Jerome
program, and months later I contacted Peter.
Took your time.
Took my time, cured of my painter's block from having seen Hans.
We were staring at this painting for all this time, wondering who the man is, what he's been doing with his life, even if you were still alive. And thankfully, when you got in touch, we learned all this information and learned an awful lot about Hans as well. Not just about this picture in particular.
Well, we'll come back to that and the value of this meeting, but I just want to talk about your relationship with Hans, how you came to know him.
I met Hans in about 75, 76. I was doing framing and all sorts of business as a young artist, and we just got friendly. Being painters, he came and looked at my work, I went to his studio, and for many years we just sit and daydream in his studio together. And he asked me to just sit. I've sat for a couple of portraits for him, one prior to this, and this one I was going through a relationship breakdown, and that's what I was doing. He asked me to come down to the studio to chat, and I sat there explaining what was going on in my life, and he painted this while we
He also gave you a sketch, which
he did indeed, which he'd done while he was in Austria prior to coming over on the Kindertransport. I think it's probably one of the earliest works in existence of his, which he must have brought it over in his little knapsack or whatever on the Kindertransport, yes. And he's given me other works as well, which I have,
What you can't see in there so clearly is the date in the bottom corner is 1938. So it would have meant that Hans was 16 years old, which is when he was evacuated from Austria because he was Jewish and he was being brought over to the UK. So, as Jerome says, this was probably something that he had in his hand, literally sketching the German officers that were around him at the time. A real snapshot of history about Hans and his life before he even came to the UK.
Peter, you touched on the value of this meeting and actually getting to speak to Jerome about what he knew about Hans. How has it helped you get an idea of who he was and what he was like as a painter?
It's been invaluable to actually be able to speak to somebody who had such a close friendship with Hans, aside from just learning about his techniques that he used during his painting. For example, the background in Jerome's portrait was something which confused us for months and for years before then, because we couldn't figure out where the portrait was painted. The kind of building in the background and the perspective on it, and the fact that it seemed to lead down to the river, we spent a long time looking at where that could be, and it turns out that it was painted against a bookcase, and the background was painted in separately after Jerome was painted, so that would explain that. But learning about Hans's life and the kind of person that he was is just incredible to hear it directly from such a close friend.
Yeah. Well, we're delighted that we've managed to help connect the pair of you and that the story has been solved. Jerome, who is Jerome Senn, thank you so much. Peter, thank you so much. And is the painting still on display down at the gallery? Or
you can certainly come and see it at the gallery, and you can see lots more of Hans's work in the gallery as well.
Fantastic. Peter McAllister there, and that is all at the M1 Fine Art in Greenwich. If you fancy seeing Jerome in a painting now that you've seen him in the flesh, you're watching London Live News. Still to come, the Paul Marine